The number 2 player in the class of 2022, Walter Nolen, has just released his top 8. And if you're a fan of the SEC, the Pac-12, or the Big Ten, you have a good shot of having him play in your conference, and we need to get into it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. And of the top 8, 4 of those schools are in the SEC. So do you believe that Walter Nolen is ultimately SEC bound? And let me know what you think. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification because I do constant college football content, player reviews, film analysis, talk style videos like this, and I'm on my push to 5,000 subscribers in my first year, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to like and comment down below because that really does go a long ways in helping content creators like myself get picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said and out the way, let's talk Walter Nolen. And any other year, he's probably the number 1 recruit in the nation. It's just this year we have a quarterback who is so highly touted, possibly the most highly touted quarterback to come out since Trevor Lawrence in Quinn Ewers, who's rated as a perfect 1 by 24/7 Sports. So that just kind of lets you know how incredibly talented this guy is. However, Walter Nolen, the number 2 player in the nation, is easily every bit worth that rating. This is a guy who, when he goes into camp settings, is just unstoppable. He's going through and showing everybody why he is as highly regarded as he is. And this class is kind of freaky because your top few guys are just lapping the field and how incredibly talented they are. You have Quinn Ewers, you have Walter Nolen, you have Travis Hunter, who they've been talking about probably has an argument to even be the number 1 player in this class. That's how incredibly good Travis Hunter is for Florida State. But focusing on Walter Nolen and his top 8, right off the top, his top 8 consist of Bama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and USC. So we have four SEC schools, 2 Big Ten, 2 Pac-12. Kind of surprised to not see Notre Dame or Clemson on here. However, Clemson already has a few defensive tackles on roster, and I think they're looking at Shaw as well in this class, another 5-star defensive tackle, and they look to be in a very good position for Shaw. So I'm not totally surprised that Walter Nolen didn't include Clemson. It is a little bit surprising, though, that no ACC teams made this top list. However, looking at this top list, there are some interesting tidbits, and we'll start with a Georgia, who looks to be in phenomenal place for Walter Nolen right now. He has poured over Georgia. He loves the environment. He really is high on Kirby Smart and loves the atmosphere of the Georgia Dogs. So if you're a Georgia fan, you really have to feel confident about where you are. Now, this race is still 100% wide open, but because of his familiarity and comfortability with the University of Georgia, you do have to be excited about the prospect of that, especially for a player of this magnitude. My goodness me, he's going to come in and make waves. Similar for Ohio State, we have Larry Johnson on the trail for Walter Nolen. And for my recruiting fanatics, you know when you hear the name Larry Johnson, you almost just groan because he is a phenomenal recruiter, a phenomenal coach. And anytime he's after your guy, it's just like we've talked about with cornerbacks when it pertains to Corey Raymond Jr. from LSU. When you see that name after a cornerback that your team is after, you just kind of groan because you know what you're in for. You know what kind of recruiter he is. You know what kind of coach he is, and he has every pitch that you could possibly throw. Larry Johnson is that dude. So this Ohio State kind of prospect right now and where Ohio State is, they have to feel very confident. Michigan is going to be more of an uphill battle just because they have to pitch against Ohio State, who has so many players in recent memory. However, Michigan does have the good argument of Rashawn Gary, and they can kind of try and convince Walter Nolen that he's a Rashawn Gary type because of his astronomical athleticism at the defensive tackle position. It really is something to behold. But if we look at the rest of the list, we have Oregon, USC, both teams surging in the recruiting rankings as of late. Oregon being a team that has kind of been doing some interesting things in recruiting for the past few years. The year before last, nabbing the 2 top inside linebackers in the nation in Sewell and Justin Flo, and really not turning around ever since they started hot with Kayvon Thibodeau a few years ago. Cristobal's really doing some impressive stuff up there. So Oregon is squarely in this. USC, we've been talking about, has been hot on the trail of almost every major player in the nation. Damani Jackson just committed there. Gentry Williams very high on USC. USC getting Brian Carrington from Texas. That's going to be a phenomenal move that pays phenomenal dividends because Brian Carrington at the University of Texas was a guy that a lot of recruits were very high on. You could hear chatter about how he made it a very comfortable environment because he was such effective liaison. And now he's at USC. He'll be serving in a similar capacity, but also as a field coach as well. So that's very exciting. Turning to the last few teams on this list, we have Florida, LSU, and Bama, and we'll start with Florida. Look, Florida they're always going to be in contention. Whenever you hear Florida, you do know that it is a real battle. It's going to be hard for Florida to recruit against Georgia and Alabama. However, that being said, it's always hard for Alabama and Georgia to recruit against Florida. That's going to be an awesome battle. However, he hasn't poured over Florida to the same degree I think he's poured over Georgia and Alabama. But that being said, he's highlighted very positive things about the University of Florida. We know what the University of Florida does. The Florida Gators are very real in this. They have a very proud history. And because of that, they're squarely in this. Now, LSU and Bama. LSU is another institution that, like Georgia, like Ohio State, and like Alabama, Walter Nolan has really poured over. And his thing with LSU is not only a good relationship with Coach Ed Orgeron, a good relationship with some of the players on campus already, a good relationship with Mason Smith, but also Bill Johnson is hot on the trail and is really doing a phenomenal job with Walter Nolan right now trying to pitch LSU. Now, the interesting thing for LSU, and I don't know how it's going to affect them because it hasn't affected recruiting at all for them, is the allegations and everything going into LSU with the Hush Blackwell report, the Les Miles stuff, and now Ed Orgeron being named by a second individual that he was cognizant about what was going on. This one is a little bit more damning than the last one because this one actually has shades within the Hush Blackwell report that back up Gloria Scott's testimony that Ed Orgeron was at least aware. I mean, in the testimony, Gloria Scott was able to get in touch with the person in charge of recruiting matters for LSU, and she testifies that they, along with Ed Orgeron and Darius Geis, called them back. And it is noted in the Hush Blackwell report that she did talk to that individual who she claims she did, and that the next day called them back. And now Ed Orgeron is being asked to testify, but hopefully it's not true. Hopefully Ed Orgeron is telling the truth when he says he wasn't aware. However, we do need to realize that this hasn't affected LSU recruiting any. They are still surging, and LSU is the goodest place of any for a defensive lineman. The last place on this list, Alabama, is somewhere that, Walter Nolan understandably is very high on. He says it's Alabama. Come on. If you're a defensive tackle, if you're a defender, that's kind of the place you always dream about going. It is the place to go. Freddie Roach is hot on the trail, and they're kind of using the country roots Walter Nolan has to their advantage. It's kind of funny. Freddie Roach apparently talks to him about four-wheelers all the time, and Saban is doing what Saban normally does. He kind of figures out what's important to the family, and he goes all at it. Walter Nolan's mom has spoke about education is very important to them, and Saban's entire pitch has been getting Walter Nolan to focus on the education aspect that University of Alabama offers, what they can offer you outside of football. So Saban is a guy who historically, if you read books on him, has always kind of taken this approach. If he figures out what's important to the recruit's family, and he usually goes after charming the parents, and then it helps him kind of get them to talk to the recruit. And it kind of, familiarity and comfortability is huge in recruiting. Usually, if you can get the parents comfortable with the university, you're very good in your chances for the kid. It's very few times we see like a Landon Collins where he commits somewhere and the parents aren't on board. That's always unfortunate. We never like to see that, but it's few and far between. Usually a good bet is going to get the parents comfortable with your institution and you'll be able to get the kid to follow. So that is the top 8 for Walter Nolan. We have Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and USC, and this is truly a wide open race. If I had to guess, I think he probably ends up playing in the SEC simply because of the history those programs have. However, if he doesn't play in the SEC, I think it's most likely that it's Ohio State because Larry Johnson. And for those of us in the know about recruiting, we know what Larry Johnson does. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Kerry Combs is also involved in this, but Ohio State, they put out defensive linemen like it's going out of style, and so my bet would probably be that Walter Nolan finds himself within the SEC or at Ohio State. Now, the last interesting tidbit I'll have for Alabama before I let this go is that Ty Simpson, the 5-star quarterback in Alabama's class right now, was a teammate of Walter Nolan in middle school. They're very close, and he is working heavily on getting Walter Nolan a part of this class. So that's going to be something that bodes well for Alabama because just like LSU, they have an in through friends and former teammates, former friends of Walter Nolan. That's always going to be a big positive. But I can't wait to hear what y'all are thinking. This is easily one of the best players in the nation. This would be a massive win for any team on this list, and I'm just really interested to see where he ultimately plays. But if I had to bet, it would either be Ohio State if it's not the SEC, or it's more than likely going to be that he plays in the SEC. But I can't wait to hear what y'all are thinking. That's it. See ya.